The Scandals and Surprises of William Jennings Bryan. William Jennings Bryan, known as the Great Commoner, was a towering figure in American politics in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. His career was marked by his passionate advocacy for populism, his 3 runs for the presidency, and his role in the famous Scopes monkey trial. Beyond his public achievements, Bryan's life was filled with controversies, shocking incidents, and intriguing facts that continue to captivate historians and political enthusiasts. Here, we delve into 10 of the most scandalous and surprising aspects of Bryan's life. Fact number 1. The Cross of Gold, a speech that shocked the nation. In 1896, at the Democratic National Convention held at the Chicago Coliseum from July 7 to 11, William Jennings Bryan delivered his Cross of Gold speech, which became one of the most famous orations in American political history. Addressing nearly 20,000 delegates and attendees, Bryan articulated his fierce opposition to the gold standard, which he argued disproportionately harmed the agrarian and lower-income classes by restricting the money supply and perpetuating deflation. In a climactic finale, Bryan declared, "You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold," a statement that not only brought the audience to a roaring applause but also symbolically split the Democratic Party. This division saw the more conservative Democrats, who supported gold standard policies, distancing themselves from Bryan's populist and Silverite faction. His speech was so influential that it led to his nomination as the presidential candidate, profoundly shaping the party's platform and direction for years to come. Number 2. The most votes never won, Bryan's electoral record. Over the course of 3 presidential campaigns in 1896, 1900, and 1908, William Jennings Bryan accumulated a total of 493 electoral votes, an extraordinary number for someone who never served as president. Each of these elections underscored the deep divisions within American society and politics. In 1896, Bryan faced off against William McKinley and lost in a tight race, securing 176 electoral votes to McKinley's 271. His subsequent runs in 1900 and 1908 saw similar patterns of strong popular support but ultimate defeats, with electoral votes of 155 and 162 respectively. This record is particularly notable given that Bryan managed to mobilize and energize a base of supporters across the Midwest and South, regions particularly responsive to his anti-elitist, pro-silver platform. Despite his losses, Bryan's electoral performance remains one of the best among non-presidential winners, reflecting his enduring appeal and the contentious nature of turn-of-the-century American electoral politics. Number 3. Youngest presidential candidate, Bryan's record-breaking run. At the age of 36, William Jennings Bryan became the youngest major party candidate ever to run for President of the United States in 1896. This was a record at the time and demonstrated his remarkable rise in political prominence. His youth was a double-edged sword. It brought a refreshing dynamism to his campaign, appealing to many who were disillusioned with the traditional political establishment, but it also brought into question his experience and preparedness for the highest office in the land. Bryan's youthful vigor was central to his appeal, helping him to connect with a broader demographic, including many first-time and younger voters who found his progressive views on monetary policy and social reform persuasive. However, his opponents often criticized his age and inexperience, framing him as an idealistic and naive candidate unready to manage the complexities of the presidency during a period of significant economic and international challenges. Number 4. The Scopes Trial, a clash of titans. In July 1925, Dayton, Tennessee, hosted the Scopes Trial, where William Jennings Bryan, an ardent creationist, served on the prosecution against John T. Scopes, charged under the Butler Act for teaching evolution. This trial, officially known as the State of Tennessee versus John Thomas Scopes, turned into a dramatic clash between Bryan and the renowned defense attorney Clarence Darrow. The high point was Darrow cross-examining Bryan about his literal interpretation of the Bible, which was both a legal and cultural spectacle, highlighting the conflict between modernist and traditionalist values. Bryan's perceived defeat and his death 5 days after the trial ended on July 26, 1925, left a complex legacy, reflecting the deep cultural divisions of the time. Number 5. Against the tide, Bryan's anti-imperialist stand. After the Spanish-American War in 1898, as America took control of territories like the Philippines, Bryan opposed their annexation, advocating that imperialism contradicted democratic values. He famously criticized the Treaty of Paris, 1898, which ended the war and allowed U.S. acquisition of territories, arguing that it violated core American principles against colonialism. His anti-imperialist views isolated him from many in his party, diminishing his political influence but cementing his stance on democratic integrity. Number 6. The 1896 election, a political slugfest. The 1896 presidential election featured a stark contrast between William Jennings Bryan and William McKinley. Bryan campaigned vigorously for free silver and economic reforms favorable to workers and farmers, delivering hundreds of speeches nationwide. McKinley, supported by his campaign manager Mark Hanna, utilized a front porch strategy and substantial business backing, outspending Bryan with approximately $3.5 million to Bryan's $300,000. McKinley won with 271 electoral votes against Bryan's 176, reflecting the powerful influence of capital in politics and setting a precedent for future campaigns. Despite Bryan's loss, his energetic campaign had a lasting impact on American political life, paving the way for later progressive movements. Number 7. Champion of reform, Bryan's populist agenda. William Jennings Bryan, often regarded as a pioneer of progressive ideas, was fervent in his advocacy for populist reforms that later became staples of American governance. He championed the direct election of senators, which came to fruition with the 17th Amendment in 1913. Additionally, his support for women's suffrage contributed to the momentum that led to the 19th Amendment in 1920. Bryan was also a vocal proponent of the income tax, which was established through the 16th Amendment in 1913. His ability to push these reforms, despite strong resistance from the political establishment, not only branded him as a potential demagogue but also showcased his enduring influence on legislative progress in the United States. Number 8. The Cowardly Lion, Bryan's literary legacy. The character of the Cowardly Lion in L. Lefranc-Baum's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, 1900, is often interpreted as a satirical depiction of William Jennings Bryan. Critics and scholars suggest that the lion's quest for courage mirrors Bryan's ambitious yet ultimately unsuccessful presidential campaigns. This interpretation aligns with the political allegory of the novel, where other characters and elements are believed to represent key figures and issues of the 1890s, including the debate over gold versus silver. Bryan's integration into such a significant piece of American literature highlights the extensive cultural footprint he left, reflecting his prominence and the public's perception of his political endeavors. Number 9. Silver Crusader, Bryan's monetary battle. Central to William Jennings Bryan's political identity was his staunch advocacy for the free coinage of silver, a policy he believed would alleviate the economic hardships of farmers and the working class. This policy, known as bimetallism, aimed to supplement the gold standard with silver to promote inflation, thereby making debts cheaper to repay. Bryan's passionate argument for silver reached its zenith during his famous Cross of Gold speech in 1896. Although his proposal polarized public opinion and intensified political debate, it cemented his reputation as a champion for the economically disenfranchised and underscored his lasting legacy in the realm of economic policy. Number 10. Bryan and Trump, populist parallels. William Jennings Bryan and Donald Trump, despite the century that separates their careers, share notable similarities as populist figures who profoundly stirred the American electorate. Both leaders ran for president multiple times, faced formidable opposition from established political entities, and relied on innovative forms of mass communication to reach their supporters, Bryan through his powerful speeches and Trump via social media. These strategies helped them to directly engage with the populace, bypassing traditional media and political institutions. Their careers reflect the enduring presence and appeal of populist movements in American political history, highlighting how charismatic leadership can influence national policy and public sentiment.